I mean, the only problem with Islamic fundamentalism are the fundamentals of Islam. Now we have...
the one, the only, Sam Harris. You know who he is. We love the dude. We're gonna check out his best arguments and comebacks right now. First though, please click like and subscribe below, and we will get going immediately.
Well, I do. I think we have to distinguish between how we treat ideas and how we treat people. And what you hear in Dr. Carson's remarks is a kind of Christian demagoguery coming into the conversation. Frankly, he's not a very thoughtful person. I mean, here's a surgeon who doesn't believe in evolution. I mean, if ever you needed proof that you could be a surgeon without being a scientist, you have it in the person of Dr. Carson. So I don't expect him to have thought deeply about how Islam may be, as a set of doctrines and ideas, may be incompatible with the Constitution or any other set of ideas. But he is a Bible thumper of sorts who, I think, rightly fears the demagoguery of his antithesis in the Muslim world. But that doesn't mean, I mean, so for instance, I am a very vocal critic of Islam as a set of doctrines and ideas. And Dean, your other guest, has called me a bigot in the past. I think quite unfairly.
On Twitter, not in your face. But I will tonight if you like that.
Well, okay,
no problem doing that.
It's even more courageous to do it on Twitter. But let me just spell out, lest he seem to obfuscate the issue here, is that I think there are thousands, no doubt thousands of Muslim Americans who could be great presidents and far better presidents than Ben Carson or Donald Trump. That is not, and there's nothing about criticizing Islam as a set of ideas or worrying about Sharia law that denies that fact. And what's very unhelpful here is in all the other cases where people like Dean and other Muslim apologists find bigotry and racism or pretend to find it where it doesn't exist.
I would point out that the moment you see the link between morality and human well-being, you can see that notions of right and wrong and good and evil that come to us from religion often break this connection. And that's what's so dangerous about religion. I mean, in the best case, religion gives people bad reasons to be good where good reasons are actually available. In the worst case, it just disregards human well-being entirely. So, for instance, the Catholic Church is simply more concerned about stopping contraception than stopping the rape of children. I mean, that is a fact about both the beliefs of this particular person, the use of his energy over the last several decades, and just the energy of the church. If you know anything about the child rape scandal in the Catholic Church, it is mind-boggling, the effort that was not spent to protect children and the effort that was spent on sheltering the rapists from secular justice. The Catholic Church is also more concerned, incidentally, about stopping gay marriage than stopping genocide. I mean, this is what its attention is on. Okay. This, when you realize that questions of right and wrong actually relate to questions of human well-being, this is not morality. This is not an alternate moral framework that we have to take seriously. Ironically, the best way to predict what somebody is going to tend to do is just to ask them. I mean, that's why talking to people actually, it's not that they can't deceive you, or it's not that they can't be self-deceived, but the people who are telling you what they're interested in and what they want to do and what they hope to have happen, and the neo-Nazis who are going to protest, who are going to have their placards and their websites and all of their efforts, they are advertising their conscious states ad nauseum. And who knows if any one person really believes what he says he believes. There is a distance between what people profess to believe and what they actually believe, or what would be behaviorally operational. But we know a lot about what people will do based on what they've done and what they say they want to do. And I don't know that a brain scan is going to get much. It's not going to get much better than that predicting across time. It gets better than that in the moment. So, for instance, we know we could all go to a psychology lab tomorrow and get tested on various stimuli and have our innate racism uncovered. And whether or not you think you're racist or not, we know virtually everyone shows some racial bias when put through this paradigm of the implicit association test. And you're just slow. So if we showed you positive words and faces of various races, your race and some other race, you would be slower to associate positive words to the out-group face than to your own group, and quicker to associate negative words. And no matter how liberal you are, no matter how embarrassed you are, no matter how much you want to prove to the experimenter you're not racist, you will fail to demonstrate a lack of racial bias. So that's insight into the nature. So that's something you can know about yourself and be on guard for its insidious effects in your life. And it's a good ethical norm to want to correct for it. I mean, this is something we want to get away from, and we're right to want to get away from it. But science can dig into the details of our minds even now in ways that we might find surprising.
Wow.
So the problem, notice, the problem is not religious extremism, okay, because extremism is not a problem if your core beliefs are truly nonviolent. The problem isn't fundamentalism, which we often hear this said. These are euphemisms. I mean, the only problem with Islamic fundamentalism are the fundamentals of Islam. Now we have Mullah Omar and Osama bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. These guys agree about the nature of reality and how to live within it. And the problem is they are giving a very plausible version of the faith. Osama bin Laden is not the Reverend Jim Jones of the Muslim world. It would be wonderful if he were, but the problem is he is giving a truly straightforward version of Islam, and you really have to be an acrobat to figure out how he's distorting the faith. Now, if these guys were Jains, or Buddhists, or Amish, or Quakers, it would be...
If you didn't know, Jainism is a religion based in India, I believe, or at least around the Indian subcontinent, and it's known for being very pacifist.
It would be patently obvious how they were distorting their religion. I mean, in fact, their behavior would be unintelligible. Okay, it is not obvious by the light of Islam, and this is just a fact we have to speak honestly about. And no one should be speaking more honestly about this and more volubly about this than moderate Muslims. Moderate Muslims have to find some way to grapple with this fact. But to say that Osama bin Laden is David Koresh is just a lie, and it's a dangerous lie at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I think one thing to point out is that Ben Carson would have said the same thing about atheists. He would have said an atheist shouldn't be president. And in fact, if you look at the polls, Americans are more reluctant to vote for an atheist than for a Muslim by a factor of probably 20%. In fact, atheism is the only identity that that would prevent your election as a qualified member of your own party when people of your own party are polled. So, we can play this victim card. We can worry about political bigotry. It's a real problem, but it is visited upon atheists, it's visited upon other minorities, and what gets lost here, and what Dean, frankly, has really been a scandalous purveyor of.
Scandalous purveyor.
The efforts. Well, let me finish my sentence, Dean.
I'm excited.
Well, I'll tell you what the problem is, and then you can defend yourself.
Please, thank you.
What you see here is an effort to paint Islam, the doctrine, as identical to every other religion on earth. There's no special problem with Islam as a political reality, Islamism, jihadism. There's no connection between the doctrine and the kind of terrorism and human rights abuses we see worldwide. And that is a lie. And it's a lie, and everyone knows it, whether you're a bigot or a reasonable person. It is a lie that is in plain view, and it has to be debunked by Muslims like Dean. And that's the crucial problem here. People like Dean need to be candid about the link between belief and behavior, and they need to be willing to reform the faith. And instead of being willing to do that, they call people like me bigots. And that is a huge problem for this conversation. It's decidedly unhelpful, and it's driving it's driving the polls apart, and I think we're going to wake up in a world that looks more like Western Europe at this point, where you have fascists calling the shots on both sides. religion at this moment has a monopoly on being able to promulgate bad ideas without the usual collisions with clear-thinking people in the world. There's a taboo against criticizing bad thinking, illogical thinking, false claims to evidence, false claims to knowledge. And I think this has just a destabilizing effect on human cooperation in general, because all we have is a choice between conversation and violence when things really matter. And when you're telling me that there's certain things you know to be true, but the way you know them is not based on any kind of publicly available mode of evidence or reasoning, and these things are not only non-negotiable, they're the most important principles in your life. This is intrinsically divisive, and this worries me across the board with all religion, but with certain religions, their commitments don't matter all that much. The fact that Jains won't kill animals and are rather dogmatic vegetarians, that's not a problem for and we're not going to see Jain terrorists insofar as they are, and this is why fundamentalism is a term of art and a red herring. If the fundamentalism is not a problem if the fundamentals of your religion are totally benign. The crazier you get as a Jain, the less anyone has to worry about you. And that is rather obviously not true of Islam as a religion, nor is it true of many other religions. But Islam has a few variables that we've just touched on briefly that are uniquely problematic. And if I could just touch on this notion of grievance that Majid just discussed, I think we also have to admit that certain grievances really are just born of religion. They really are just theological. And if you push back hard enough on the theology, discredit the theology, that is what you need to do to contain the risk born of these grievances. And so, drawing cartoons about the Prophet Muhammad, right now. If I took out a piece of paper now and drew a cartoon, a stick figure, and said, "This is Muhammad," it's not implausible to worry that the rest of my life will just be this deranged attempt not to be killed by some religious maniac who thinks I have crossed a line there. There's only one religion on earth today that is doing that to people, and this is not based on U.S. foreign policy. It's not based on anything other than specific religious ideas, and that what liberals where liberals have grown confused on this topic is they think there's some tension between free speech and freedom of religion, whereas there's not. If your free exercise of your religion requires that I follow its precepts, that's not freedom of religion. That is theocracy. Right? So, and there's nothing I could say on this stage tonight that infringes upon anyone's freedom of religion. There's nothing. People have the political freedom to practice whatever faith they want in this country, and we all, as just sane participants in a civil society, have to recognize that all of these religious ideas have to be on the table to be criticized, mocked, satirized, and that has to be the line between free speech and its erosion. That, for me, is the most crucial line to be very clear about.
Very interesting. One thing about the criticism of religion and religious ideas is that it's hard to tell what's mockery and what's respectful criticism, you could say. And, it's hard to say, is there respectful criticism even? But it's important that criticism isn't just a mode of destruction, because there are certain modes of analysis, you could say postmodernist strategies that can be used, which are basically just deconstructionist, just destruction. There's no respecting the baby in the bathwater, so to speak. They're very willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They don't even acknowledge the baby in the bathwater. They don't acknowledge that there's something of value in the canon of religion and theology. They don't acknowledge that there's some ethos there that's important, and they're willing to throw out the whole thing. So with your criticism, it's important to be nuanced about what criticism is, what criticism looks like, and how that's different from things like propaganda and just postmodern techniques of deconstruction. Thank you for watching. This is Sam Harris. I'm going to be coming back with more very soon. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much. Have a good day.